Have you ever heard of a town where in the dead of night, people saw glowing red eyes floating in the darkness? A small town in West Virginia, Point Pleasant, collided with a mystery in 1966, one beyond the limits of human understanding. Some said it was a beast. Others believed it was a warning of the apocalypse. But after the night they saw the Mothman, death began to visit the town, one soul at a time. What really was the Mothman? This is Whisper from History, where forgotten voices rise again. It began quietly, with whispers carried on the cold winds of November 1966, in the small American town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a place of quiet hills, fog-shrouded rivers, and rusting steel bridges. Something strange began to stir. People spoke of red eyes in the dark, of wings fast and black slicing through the night sky, of a figure that watched, but never spoke. At first it sounded like just another ghost story, but by the time it was over, one of the worst tragedies in local history would unfold, and the line between myth and reality would blur forever. On the chilly night of November 12, 1966, 5 men were digging a grave in the small cemetery of Clendenin, just outside Point Pleasant. They worked in near silence, their breath turning to mist in the cold air when something passed overhead, a shadow. Huge, silent. One of the men looked up and froze. They all saw it. Then, a large humanoid figure, with wings like a bat, gliding low above the trees. It didn't flap. It didn't make a sound. It simply drifted and vanished into the nearby woods. The men dropped their shovels and ran. That was the first recorded sighting. But it was far from the last. 3 days later, 2 young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Mollett, drove along an isolated stretch of road outside an abandoned World War II munitions plant, locally known as the TNT area. It was near midnight when Linda noticed at first 2 glowing red circles in the dark. Not lights, not reflections, eyes. And then from behind an old generator building a creature stepped into the headlights. 7 feet tall, wings folded against its back, a head small, almost sunken, but eyes that glowed in unholy crimson. Roger slammed the accelerator. The creature spread its wings and took off after them. The car hit over 100 miles per hour, but still the thing followed, flying effortlessly, just above the road. When they finally reached the bright lights of town, it disappeared. They reported it to Deputy Sheriff Millard Halstead. He didn't believe them, not at first, but when he saw their trembling hands, their pale faces, he began to wonder. They weren't lying, he later said. They were genuinely terrified. The story spread like wildfire. By the next morning, the Mothman had a name. Newspapers picked it up. Radio stations buzzed. People began driving out to the TNT area, flashlights in hand, hoping to catch a glimpse of the monster in the woods. And soon more did. Throughout late 1966 and into 1967, dozens of sightings poured in. Farmers, police officers, housewives, teenagers. They all described the same thing, a dark-winged figure with red eyes. Sometimes it stood by the road. Sometimes it perched on rooftops or telephone poles. And sometimes it appeared right outside people's windows, peering in from the darkness. But what terrified the town most wasn't just what people saw. It was the sense that the creature wasn't simply observing them. It was warning them. Those who encountered it often reported a deep feeling of dread. Some even claimed to hear strange humming noises or experience missing time. One woman, Marcella Bennett, was visiting friends near the TNT area one evening when she saw it again. She was carrying her baby when something rose from the shadows beside her car, enormous and silent, its eyes fixed on her. She froze, paralyzed by fear. It was like time stopped. She later said, "I couldn't breathe, it was just looking at me." She fled into the house and locked the doors, but the creature followed, landing on the porch, the sound of heavy wings. Against the walls, the red glow through the window. And then as quickly as it came, it was gone. But that night something changed in Point Pleasant. Fear wasn't just in the woods anymore, it had come home. By early 1967, Point Pleasant had become a town on edge. Dogs went missing, electrical disturbances plagued the area, and many residents began reporting visits from mysterious strangers in black suits, pale-faced men who spoke in monotone voices asking questions about the Mothman. They called themselves government agents, but they carried no identification. They drove identical black cars and seemed to know details about people's lives that no outsider should. One local reporter, Mary Heyer, who covered the Mothman stories for the Athens Messenger, said these men visited her repeatedly, warning her to stop publishing articles about the creature. She refused. Then one night, a strange man entered her office short, with strange eyes and a mechanical voice. He asked bizarre questions about local lights in the sky. When she looked away for a moment, he vanished. Who were these people? Were they real, or part of something larger, something darker, hiding behind the curtain of ordinary life? Then came December 15th, 1967. It was a bitterly cold evening. Christmas lights twinkled along Main Street. Families shopped, laughed, and hurried home across the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio. At 5:04 p.m., the bridge carrying rush-hour traffic began to shudder. Steel groaned, bolts snapped. In seconds, the entire structure collapsed into the icy Ohio River below. 46 people died. Cars and trucks sank in the freezing darkness as survivors screamed from the riverbanks. It was the deadliest bridge disaster in U.S. history at that time, and for the people of Point Pleasant, it marked the end and the beginning of something they could never explain. Because in the days leading up to the collapse, the Mothman had returned. Several witnesses claimed to have seen it perched atop the bridge, only days before the tragedy. Wings folded motionless, as if watching. After that night, the sightings stopped. Completely. For some, it was proof that the Mothman had been a harbinger of doom, a supernatural warning of the disaster to come. For others it was coincidence, a mass panic fueled by rumor, fear, and grief. But for those who saw it, for those who lived through those nights of terror, coincidence wasn't enough. Investigators later determined the Silver Bridge collapsed due to a failed eye-bar joint, a small structural defect undetectable at the time. A mechanical flaw, not a curse. But even engineers admitted that the timing was eerie. Why had the creature appeared in the months leading up to the collapse only to vanish right after? Why had so many unrelated people described the same figure long before any bridge failure was suspected? And perhaps most haunting of all, if the Mothman wasn't real, what was everyone seeing? In the years that followed, Point Pleasant tried to move on. The town rebuilt, but the scars ran deep. Many witnesses refused to talk about what they'd seen, fearing ridicule. Others left the area entirely, but the legend wouldn't die. In the decades since, reports of similar winged beings have surfaced across the globe, from Chernobyl in 1986 to Mexico City before the 2009 swine flu outbreak to Chicago in recent years. Each time the same description: dark wings, red eyes, silent flight. Each time before disaster. For believers, the Mothman is more than a myth. It's a messenger, a sentinel of tragedy, a warning that something is about to go terribly wrong. For skeptics, it's a mix of psychology, fear, and coincidence, a kind of collective hallucination born from stress and suggestion. But maybe both are true. Maybe the Mothman is less a creature of flesh and blood, and more a mirror reflecting our deepest anxieties, our primal sense that something unseen is watching the fragile structure of our world. Because the people of Point Pleasant didn't just see something. They felt it. A presence in the dark, a weight in the air before the storm. And when the bridge fell, it was as if that invisible tension finally snapped. Decades later, visitors still come to Point Pleasant, to the small museum downtown, to the memorial. On the riverbank, to the place where the Silver Bridge once stood. They look up at the night sky, wondering if the red eyes might return. Locals still tell the story, sometimes in whispers, sometimes with nervous laughter, but always with the same unease. Because some nights deep in the woods beyond the TNT area, people still report seeing a shadow with wings. Maybe it's just a large bird. Maybe it's the wind through broken trees. Or maybe it's something else. Something waiting. Something that comes only when tragedy draws near. For those who were there in 1967, the memories haven't faded. The cold metal of the bridge, the screaming, the feeling that none of it was just random. One survivor later said, "It's like the town was cursed, like we were warned, but no one could understand the message." A message written not in words, but in shadows and fear. And perhaps that's the most haunting part of all. The idea that somewhere beyond what we can measure or explain, there are forces trying to reach us in ways we cannot comprehend. The Mothman was never captured, never photographed clearly, never explained, but its legend still hovers like the wings over Point Pleasant, reminding us that some stories refuse to die. That even in the modern age, mystery has not surrendered to reason. And that in the darkest corners of the night, when the wind is still, you might still hear the whisper of wings. Even today, Point Pleasant looks as peaceful as ever, as if nothing ever happened here. But people say when the night grows silent and cold, you can still hear the faint flutter of wings in the distance, as if the Mothman still flies above the darkness. Maybe he never left, or maybe he's still waiting for someone.